I want you to know this. You are valuable not because of what you achieve, but simply because of who you are. Your worth is not defined or determined by what your output is. The world doesn't need another achievement addict burning out in the pursuit of external validation. We got plenty of that going on. The world needs leaders who understand that true success is not measured by what you accomplish, but by who you become and who you help others become. Welcome to Legacy Lounge, the podcast where you'll discover how to lead with purpose and build a legacy that matters. So if you're ready to step into your full potential, show up authentically for yourself and others, and create a lasting impact on the world, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hey there, and welcome back to the Legacy Lounge. I'm Brin'na Rollins-Williams, and today I want to talk about something that nearly destroyed my health, my relationships, and not to be overly dramatic, but it is true, my life. And I didn't even realize what was happening. It is called achievement addiction. And if you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that you've experienced it yourself too. Today, I want to share how I went from Bullseye Brin'na, a leader who measured worth by metrics, to someone that builds authentic impact that actually matters. So let me take us back to a conversation when I was a little girl talking to my dad. I believe I was around 8 years old. And he said something that shaped the next 3 decades of my life. Brin'na, if you're going to do something, be the best at it. My dad also said all the time, jokingly, Brin'na, you worry about you. And I know my dad meant well by this wisdom and advice. And he was trying to instill that strong work ethic in me that I do have. And it encouraged excellence. It encouraged dedication. It encouraged extra effort when you think you have none left. Somewhere along the way, I lost focus of what really matters. I lost the power of the wisdom in that advice from him, and I twisted it into, you worry about you, Brin'na. Well, what that meant for me was that I worried about everyone else, and I excluded myself. That meant I was worrying about me, and that is so backwards. It also meant that if I'm going to do something to be the best at it, that I could be the best at it as long as it didn't come at compensating myself, my self-worth, and at a certain point, calling a timeout for yourself because you are so far off track, you need to reset, that's okay, and that you can still be the best at something when you do that. I want to thank my dad, if he's listening to this, for the consistent wisdom that he continues to impart on me. Whether I am doing something and to be the best at it, to worry about myself, you worry about you, kiddo, to also helping me identify and understand that your worth is not determined by your achievements. And this is one that I know he has experienced on his own leadership journey, and many of us have. And what I recognize now is that my value and my worth became the only story that I told myself and that I defined myself by. So my Bullseye Brin'na era, if you will, the version of me that had hit every metric within my target scope of responsibilities, I exceeded the expectations. I proved my value through external validation, the off-cycle pay recognition, the promotions, the support financially, the scope of responsibility, all of it. I ate it up. And it started at 8. I had everything I thought I ever wanted. My dream job that was my retirement goal for myself. Target's youngest district senior director, managing the $580 million across 10 stores, thousands of team members in my responsibility scope, the 6-figure bonuses, the beautiful big office, the flexibility and the schedule to do what was right for the business, be where you need to be when you need to be there, do what you need to do when you need to do it. The recognition that came with it and the trajectory of my team after stabilizing in their successes became how I defined what my success story looked like everywhere, in conversations, on socials, in LinkedIn, how I talked, how I lived, and how I defined myself. But here's what LinkedIn doesn't show is that the anxiety medication I was on, it was to function all day. The panic attacks I was having in parking lots to bookend a visit with my team became a routine I planned around. I was so disconnected from myself that I could go for days running on pure fumes and exhaustion, and then suddenly start crying for reasons that I couldn't even name because I was at capacity. I had achieved success, but I had lost myself in the process. And you see, achievement addiction, it's so sneaky like that. It doesn't look like a problem from the outside. It actually looks more like a solution. And achievement addicts are high performers, typically. They are the reliable ones. They're the ones that you call in a state of panic or emergency or holy crap, I don't know what to do. That's who you call when you pick up the phone. And they're the people who always get stuff done. And they're rewarded with promotions and praise and more responsibility and endless thank yous. But inside, it feels like for that person that they're on a never-ending hamster wheel. And there's always another goal. There's always another metric. There's always going to be another mountain to climb. And no matter how much achievement we get and receive and earn, it is never enough to fill the void where our actual self-worth should be. And that wake-up call for me is articulated through my recent publication in BU Brand Volume 2. The title of my chapter is The Beautiful Breakdown, Rebuilding Legacy from the Inside Out. And I share in that chapter that I was once standing on a sidewalk parking lot outside of a particularly challenging day as a senior director. And I looked at my direct report and I was just in shambles. It came out of nowhere. But I heard 5 words. Numbers don't make people stay. Leaders do. So 7 words. But the 5 hit me like a train. And in that moment, I realized that I had become really good at managing tasks and totally lost touch at leading humans. I was so focused on hitting the next goal, the next target, pun intended. I had forgotten, the impact that I have the ability to make on the people behind the numbers that they are producing. And I was achieving the success, but I was creating more emptiness. I was creating it in myself. I was creating it in my marriage. I was creating it in my life, and I was creating it in others. And that night I went home and I had to have a really hard look at myself in the mirror. And I had to take a very real approach at reflecting on my life. I could see the external markers of success, but I also could see how it correlated to that emptiness feeling. I was achieving for the sake of achievement alone, not because it aligned with my personal values or served a greater purpose. I had totally lost why I was even wanting to do what I was doing anymore. So that's when I started to shift and ask different questions. So instead of thinking or even asking someone out loud, how do I achieve more? I started asking, how do I create more meaning? And instead of how do I get better results, it became, how do I build better relationships, deeper relationships, more meaningful relationships? That led to, how do I climb higher? Switching to, how do I go deeper? That shift from achievement addiction to authentic impact does not happen overnight. Ask my therapist, ask the yoga studio, ask the doctors, ask the psychiatrist. I went all in on what I was going to do to change how I was living and experiencing my own life. And it's taken about 2 to 2.5 years to get me to where I'm at today. And I am nowhere near close to done growing and evolving. But the framework that has helped me navigate it is what I want to give to the world because it has helped me. But first, I had to recognize the difference between healthy ambition and achievement addiction. Healthy ambition is driven out of a place of purpose and values and service to others. Whereas achievement addiction is driven primarily out of fear, insecurity, and unfortunately, the need for external validation. Healthy ambition is the one that asks, how can I use my gifts to serve others? Where achievement addiction comes in and says, how can I prove I'm valuable? Healthy ambition is more sustainable because it's fueled by meaning. And that meaning is aligned with your values as a leader yourself. They don't have to look like anybody else's. But achievement addiction is exhausting eventually because it's fueled by fear. The second thing I want to share is how, for me, I redefine success. Because for years, I measured that external metric of revenue numbers, promotion timelines and frequency, performance ratings and stack. But I started asking, what if success wasn't about what I achieved, but about who I became in the process and how I influenced those around me in that process? Which led me to now lead my company, Legacy Fulfilled. And what's cool is we get to create metrics internally in my own business of legacy metrics, but they're ways of measuring impact that go beyond the business driving indicators. It's about the meaning and the impact behind it. I think that's pretty cool. So yes, I do still track my sales numbers. And also I started tracking the number of people who show up and appear to feel more heard or valued, or through testimonies or texts or DMs or messages that people give. I analyze what they say because it's about how I had made them feel during our interaction. I started measuring whether our processes and the data that's coming alongside those honor both results and relationships. And instead of just counting promotional timelines, I started counting the number of people that have discovered a new capability that they didn't even know they had out of a discussion that we had that I chose to show up and be present for. I think it's pretty cool. The third thing that I've had to relearn is that I had to learn how to find my worth in being and not just in doing. You see, achievement addicts are humans doing. They're not human beings. Our identity in that state is so completely wrapped up in our output, the measurable goals, and likely what we tie our worth to. For me, it was money. But authentic impact comes from who you are, not just what you produce. I had to learn that value myself. When I started to apply this, I was still in my corporate role. And instead of driving my team just towards the numbers, which yes, we still did, and we still delivered because that is the job and you are expected to deliver. But I also put more emphasis on developing them as human beings, leading their leaders, leading their own life. And instead of just managing the performance, we started a partnership to invest into their potential as individuals. And what's really cool and shockingly awesome is that the numbers somehow got better because my team felt more valued for who they were and the role they had on the team. It was bigger than just the numbers we produced. They brought their whole selves to work and took their whole selves back out into the world. That's what I mean when I talk about measuring legacy impact. It's not just achievement. I have done a lot of speaking gigs recently, and one theme that's come up in almost every room is the dinner table test. Every leadership moment is mostly started by asking, if this person goes home tonight and talks about me in front of their family at the dinner table, what story are they going to tell? The more that I ask that question, I can see a physical shift in the listener that I'm talking to. It clicks. Because achievements are temporary, but the impact on how you make another person feel lives on eternally. Now, I want to be clear. I am not anti-achievement. I still have goals. I still have measurable results, and I still celebrate the victories along the way and a form of success in the growth of the business. But the difference is that the achievements are now a byproduct because it's coming from a place of authentic impact. It's not the primary goal that I'm using to measure what success looks like. So how do you know if you might be struggling with achievement addiction, even if you don't want to admit it yet? Here's a couple signs to think on. You might feel anxious when you're being productive. Your worth might fluctuate based off your latest performance that you hear. You might have trouble celebrating other successes. You might also struggle to celebrate your own. You might constantly be comparing yourself to others or feel guilty when you attempt to rest. You also might primarily define yourself by your accomplishments. So if you're listening right now and thinking, I feel like she might be talking to me, you're not alone. And there is actually a very easy way to move forward. It just takes the commitment for you to make a choice to choose something different for yourself. Identify one area where you're chasing achievement for achievement's sake and ask yourself, what am I really trying to prove and to who? I would also encourage you to define one way that you could create an authentic impact in that exact same area. So instead of just hitting the numbers, how can you develop someone along the way too? The last thing is practice finding your worth in just being, not doing. Spend 5 minutes alone every day, appreciating the person that you are. That includes your character, your growth, your relationships. Separate those from your accomplishments and see yourself in that. Because that moment that I chose integrity over achievement, and I walked away from corporate not knowing what I was going to do next, that's actually when I saw my worth wasn't tied in a title or a salary at all. My worth was in my character. It was in my purpose and in my commitment to showing up authentically, which is why I'm still doing that exactly the same way today. My role through Legacy Fulfilled is to help other leaders create cultures that honor both results and relationships to them. It's to discover that authentic impact is so much more fulfilling than an empty achievement. So if you're struggling with achievement addiction, I want you to know this. You are valuable not because of what you achieve, but simply because of who you are. Your worth is not defined or determined by what your output is. The world doesn't need another achievement addict burning out in the pursuit of external validation. We got plenty of that going on. The world needs leaders who understand that true success is not measured by what you accomplish, but by who you become and who you help others become in the process. Something to think about. Until next time, keep building magnetic teams. And remember, you've got this. Like my dad said, you worry about you. And know that as a leadership mentor, I'm right here rooting alongside you. This is Brin'na. I'll catch you next week on another episode of The Legacy Lounge. That's it for this episode of Legacy Lounge, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to lead with purpose. Remember, leadership begins with you. When you're connected to your values, strengths, and authentic self, you show up powerfully for your team, businesses, and everyone you lead. To authentically lead others, you must first lead yourself. I challenge you to consider, how are you investing in your personal growth to create a legacy that you envision? Thank you for joining me in the Legacy Lounge. If this episode sparked any thoughts or inspired action, I'd love to hear from you. I'm your host, Brin'na Rollins-Williams. Connect with me on LinkedIn or other socials and let's continue the conversation. Remember, your legacy is built one intentional step at a time.